get why we had 550 people in here, and you want to put up 36,000 at the end of the day, I think you are seriously misreading the things. So don't vote for this. I think it's quite silly. Right. Do you want to write a reply? No. We'll vote. That has failed. 2 votes for and 14 against. Okay, we'll go back to the substantive. I'm not going to speak to it again. I've already spoken to it once. So this is 1E, and this is the catch-all. It's substantive. So if you could please vote. That has passed 14 votes for and 2 against. All right, now this is around rates, and this is alternate 4A, that the uniformed annual general charge be $200, and this is moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Barrett. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So, colleagues, the uniform annual general charge is $200 at the moment. It was proposed in the draft that we increase it to $300. We did have at least one submission from someone who specified that they didn't want it to be increased. But there are 2 main reasons that I'm suggesting that we keep it at $200. The first one is that it gives rates relief to those at the lower end. So it doesn't change the total amount of rates that we receive. It doesn't increase the percentage of rates overall, but it means that people with properties that are lower value will pay less rates because their fixed rates will go down, and of course the proportion of rates that they pay as a proportion of the value of their property will be less than someone in a higher value property. So if you're serious about being concerned about the affordability of rates to people at the lower end, then this is something that you can do to give them that relief. Secondly, when I looked at the percentage increase in the fixed component of rates for every property, so remember that the fixed component is like a flat tax that everybody pays, the percentage increase in fixed costs was about 24%. Now that is very high when you consider that the average percent increase on the variable value part of your property is only going to be about 7%. Even if we retain the uniform annual general charge at $200 a property, those fixed costs are still going up 14%. So we're still effectively putting more burden on those at the lower end, even should UAGC stay at 200. So I just think in terms of fairness, the fair thing to do here is to keep it at 200 and give some relief to those who are living in properties that are of lower value. And I hope I'll get your support. Thank you.
Colleagues, I'm not going to support this. I'm going to go, and if this fails, I'll put up an alternative that it stays at 300 and take the officer's advice. We've done the fairness thing to death. Seriously, we have. I mean, it was 10 years ago, it was $600. I've just looked up the median uniform annual general charge across New Zealand is over $400. Now, I get that's other councils, and that isn't specifically us, but actually 300 was striking a right balance, and that's what all the numbers have been done on. So please, councillors, vote this down, stay with the officer's advice at 300, and yeah, I think we're just overdoing this fairness debate and argument. There actually is other people at the end of the day that pay for all of this. Councillor Naylor.
What I won't be supporting the suggested change. I thought we had some really good information when we had the debate originally, when we discussed this for the draft, around the slightly higher UAGC, providing a little bit more stability, particularly in light of the fluctuations that we experience with changes in valuations, changes with us moving from land value to land value, capital mix, etc. I think the best way that we can relieve the burden at the lower end is actually to have lower rates overall increase, and that seems that I'm a little bit puzzled by those who seem to be interested in promoting this for the sake of those at the lower end who haven't really seemed to have been interested in supporting lowering the overall operational costs of the organisation. But anyway,
Look, I'm sorry to interrupt Councillor Naylor on a point of order, but I have supported a number of changes to operational budgets which would reduce rates.
Okay.
So I think that that's an unfair statement. Thank you.
yeah, it's a general statement. The point that I was about to make is that the fact that the lower value in your property doesn't always equate to assuming that you're lower income. And I guess my concern is we've heard some real examples of people, particularly older people who've lived in their home for many years, whose land value has gone up astronomically, but it doesn't mean they've got an income to be able to pay for that. So yes, it can sometimes look, we can make that assumption that it's rates relief at the lower end, but I also have concerns about the impact of increasing the UAGC on the impact on non-residential, particularly commercial, because it does mean that the increases at the upper end are a little bit higher. So those are my reasons for being happy to retain what we have in our draft at 300.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, just briefly, absolutely concur with the Mayor that it is about getting the balance right. And to me, the balance isn't right, and the reason that I feel that is that when we look at actually what's in the consultation document, which is the percentages across the different groups of single unit residentials, we actually see that the lower end of the market is asked to contribute a 4% increase, 4.1, whereas the upper end is only asked to contribute a 3.2% increase. So if that was a leveler situation across there, I would be absolutely concurring with you, Mr. Mayor, that we had the balance right. But the reality is that we're actually pushing more cost into the lower end of the property market, and to me that is the exact opposite of where we want to be going in terms of actually assuring that affordability is met while ambition is also delivered. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking in favour of the UAGC moving to $200. First, very tired. The UAGC is a regressive tax like GST, so it disproportionately affects those who have least money to spend. So as a matter of principle, I'd rather we didn't lean into regressive taxation structures. And it just seems to me to be an odd argument that we shouldn't try to help those at the lower end of our economic scale because some people at the higher end are also struggling. I just don't see the logic of that. If we can help the people that we know to be struggling the most, why would we not do that? Just because some other people are struggling doesn't mean that everybody deserves to struggle more. So this is something we can do. It's a small gesture. It doesn't change anything about the rates, how the rates incident, it's about how the rates incident falls, not about how much we get from rates. And I think this would be a significant and meaningful gesture to our community who would benefit from it, which would be those people who are at the lower end of the scale. So I'll be supporting this.
Councillor Dennison?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not going to support the reduction to 200 and keep at the 300 that we've been out on. I think your point, Mr. Mayor, that's been raised around fairness is around this has some viewpoint on it around, my word would be keeping it moderate. That whole trying to work out who's the lower end of the spectrum is actually, like Councillor Naylor said, is the widower who might be in a higher property but still is on a pension. There's many examples, and some of these lower value properties and maybe a lower value suburbs are actually now first home owners that are in jobs that have got mortgages over the line and actually have sometimes dual incomes. So I think that rationale, there's no real line to confirm that. And the reference was that we had one submission asking for it to be kept at 200. And as if this is the real magic bullet to keep our rates down, and it really isn't. The whole day's been spent trying to get the rates down. This is just how it's allocated, and for my mind, moderation is my equation for fairness. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Johnson, right to reply.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to point out that at no point did I say it was a magic bullet. It is, however, something we can do without significantly increasing percentage rate increases for people. I find it really strange that members who've strongly argued about rates affordability wouldn't support a change like this. It doesn't make logical sense to me, so I'm really struggling to understand why that's not supported. It isn't just about how it's allocated, as if that's not important. To me, how we allocate the incidence of rates is really important. It's one of the reasons I stood for council in the first place, because as a council, the rates I felt were allocated in a way that meant that those who were on lower incomes, generally, and lower value properties, not always, of course, we can always imagine a scenario that doesn't quite fit that, were paying a bigger proportion of the rates than they reasonably should in terms of fairness. I disagree with the comments from the Mayor to say we've done fairness to death. I don't think we have. I think there's a lot of room for more fairness in how we allocate the rates, to be quite honest. So dismissing it by saying, oh, it's just how it's allocated and it's not a magic bullet, I just don't agree with those sentiments. It is important. Fairness is important. If we can provide relief to some people, why would we not do that when they're the ones that need it most? So I struggle to see why this is such a bone of contention for people. I really do. If you genuinely think that we should be reducing rates to give people relief, but you don't think we should be reducing the uniform annual general charge, then I can't see your logic. I'm sorry. So just ask yourself, is this just some kind of philosophical opposition or what? Because actually, if you want to make a difference to people, this would make a difference, and we wouldn't lose any income on it, and we wouldn't have to cut a level of service or stop a programme or defer a build. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to vote on the alternative to $200. And it's failed for lack of majority at 8-all. Okay. Councillor Dennison.
This is your recommendation that I seconded. Yeah, at 300, I think the arguments have been had. If I would say anything more, it would be just to emphasise the fact of the notion that the lower value properties are the people that can't afford to pay. I use the example of first home buyers, that many of those homes have been sold, and in many cases there are dual incomes in those houses, and yet the pensioner on the other side of the city who might have a high value property. I just don't get it. So 300 is a moderation. That was sort of my re-emphasising my first point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, colleagues, again, my argument was around balance, and I take all the views around the table. And look, it's very subjective around the commentary around fairness, but $300 is still a very, very fair charge. I go back to the median charge nationally; it exceeds 400, and in some cases in cities, it's a lot more. So I think we've reached a happy median. And it's something we went out and consulted on too. And as Councillor Dennison said, we got one comment about it. So I'd hope that you'd support this and that we can move forward. Councillor Naylor.
And my question's just really around process. I'm just trying to understand why we need a motion to move something that is already in our document and approved.
That's a good point. Okay. It's been a long day. I don't think there's any harm that we...
Yeah, I realise that, but I guess because if there's a potential for it to fail through a lack of majority, then where do we sit? So I just wondered if it was better not to move anything at all, because then status quo is what's in our document.
I'll just get the CEO to come in.
Yeah, through the chair, that's the conversation that was just going on here as well, is that, yeah, you have got all of the assumptions actually already listed in 4A, B and C, and you can see them at the very bottom of your screen there. So there is, that's the documentation that we'd be looking to vote on when we got to that particular point. Yeah, if you, we would create an issue if it failed for lack of majority. In this next instance.
Can I ask then if the mover and seconder just want to withdraw that and we just leave it?
Yes, we can do
That would
that.
be our recommendation, yeah.
But we'd have to vote on it somewhere. So
Well,
I'm happy to move it and stay with it. It gets it done. If people are going to be, I mean, you just need to make your own choice here. So I don't think we need to labour the point. All right, I'm going to put it to the vote around the UAGC as 300. Thank you. Has everyone voted? Can you just check? Yeah. Okay. That's passed 13 votes for and 3 against. Thank you. Okay, we now keep moving forward. I'm keen to get done. Okay, alternate 4B, and this is for Councillor Barrett and Councillor Dennison. This is around the differential charges charged for the FM. What does FM stand for? Okay, all right. Okay, group of semi-rural properties of 0.2 to 5 hectares to make the discount compared with the MS group be 42.5% for the 25-26 year, with a proposal for a further movement to 40% being referred to the 26-27 annual budget process. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies to colleagues and yourself for a bit of a word salad at 6 o'clock. But that's where we were able to get to in terms of advice on how to phrase this up. Look, one of the other numbers that will absolutely pop for you if you look at this page around the percentage increases for different groups is in the 0.2 to 5 hectare area, where that increase is very steep indeed, and that's largely a byproduct of the revaluations that have happened. So this recommendation just seeks to ease the pressure that's on that group a little bit. The advice back from officers is that this would pull down their rates contribution by 4%, so it'd start with in the high 20s rather than the low 30s, and that would only contribute a small amount to other ratepayers in terms of their contribution. We heard about this quite a bit in submissions actually from semi-rural or semi-residential constituents facing these increases. So what this does is just slow things down a little bit, smooths it out over 2 years instead of doing it all in 1 year, but maintains our strategic direction, which is what we set out through the long-term plan process, which was to bring the contribution that this group makes into line with other provincial centres, so that maintains that overall direction, just doing it in 2 years instead of 1. So I'd ask for your support in that regard. Thank you.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Barrett and Councillor Dennison for putting this forward. I mean, I think this is better than nothing. This is one of the areas that I anticipated going into the consultation process. We'd get a lot of feedback on, and rightly we have. What I would say is the feedback we had from the community made me question, is the strategic direction we're going in really necessary? For a small impact on the rates for our residents in the city versus putting on, you know, even with this would be rate increases averaging in the high 20s. I would suggest we just leave it at a 45% discount where it was last year, and then we can look at it again next year whether or not it's worth changing. So if there is somebody in the room open to seconding that, I would move up, thank you Councillor Johnson, an amendment that it be 45% for the 25-26 year, and then remove the, well, Councillor Johnson, what are your thoughts? Just removing the latter part of the recommendation from with a proposal for, yeah, and then strike out the latter part of the recommendation from with a proposal for further movement. The reason being, councillors, is as Councillor Barrett rightly outlined, it has a minor impact on those residential ratepayers in our community, but a major impact on those rural ratepayers. I think the argument for putting more of the rates burden onto them is sound on paper, perhaps, but in reality, these are ratepayers who look at massive double-digit increases and go, what more am I getting for that? I'm not getting better curb and channeling, I'm not getting better rubbish and recycling services, I'm still driving town like I have before. I understand the argument for an adjustment. We've had a step change. We did that last year, so we have already lowered the differential for them. I think we've gone far enough. Let's leave it at 45%, councillors, and that would respond well to the feedback from our community. So I hope you can support that.
Okay, can we just catch up with a bit of process here? So we've got the, have we got the amendment? So the seconder was Councillor Johnson. So it's going to be 45% for both years. So we'll just wait for that to get done. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I did think that the rural ratepayers made a very good case, to be honest. And I did sit there listening to them, thinking, how can I really justify this? In all fairness, and also some of them have been hit with a double whammy, where they've got quite a lot of land. The land value has gone up hugely because of its value for building. They're not wanting to sell, they're wanting to stay where they are. So the rates had already gone up a lot because of the valuation going up, and then with us changing the differential, again, I struggled to sort of justify how we were going to give a 38% rates increase to someone, really and truly. So I think there's only about 1,500 ratepayers that this affects. So when you spread that out over the rest of the ratepayers, it's not going to have a huge impact on what the rest of us pay. And, I mean, I'm sorry to use the F word again, but in fairness...
I thought you were going to go somewhere else with your comment.
But in fairness...
I thought you were going to say Featherston Street.
In fairness, I don't think we need to burden them with 38%. Yeah, thank you.
Look, councillors, I agree. I think smart. So well done for putting something up between all of you. That's looks like it's got a bit of traction. Councillor Wood, do you really need a...
I was just going to say it's nice to see Councillor Johnson and I agreeing on something. So I hope today. So I hope the whole chamber can agree on it.
Okay, let's see if you can agree with voting. Let's vote. Just on the amendment. It has passed 15 votes for and 1 against. We will now just go back to the substantive. And that's passed unanimously, 16 votes for, none against. Dockers wages. We now come to 4A, B and C. Okay, so we've done A and B, so we just need to do C. We're around targeted rates for services, adjusted as necessary to reflect the changes to the budgets for the activities concerned. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. It's a bit of bit academic, that one, but I'm not going to speak to it other than we need to vote for it. So let's vote. That's passed 16 votes for, none against. Right, we're on the home straight, people. I've said that a couple of times. But these are just assumptions from the papers, so I'm quite happy to take them all together. So we've got number 6, that the council note that the priority for program 1003 Whakarongo intersection safety upgrades as set out in the 2434 LTP has been changed and is now intended to enable greenfield residential subdivision development as set out in attachment 8. And then 7A, B and C. 7, that council note where assumptions change as a result of external funding application decisions, officers will report back to council. The categories of programs to which this applies to are A, NZTA funding requests as outlined in section 2.4.2, B, better off funded programs as outlined in attachment 5, and then C, the multicultural facility as outlined in section 2.4.2. I'm happy to move those, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Again, relatively academic, but we do need to vote for them. So can we vote, please? That has passed 16 votes for and none against. Thank you. We're now going to move back to number 7, which is the Community Housing Program, page 17. It's a memo from, you might want to stay there, Julie. I'm going to take it as being read. Is there any questions to that? If there isn't, we've got the memo there around recommendations to council that we received the memo titled Community Housing Partnership Program dated 14th of May 2025, that 2, council deferred consideration of budget allocation to the Development Subsidy Fund established by the support and funding policy to the annual plan deliberations at this meeting. Okay, so Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the officers have a additional recommendation just to go along with that to tie the knot. I can read it if you'd like. This is just an additional recommendation to respond to the report that says that council report on options and budget requirements to address identified opportunities for a community housing partnership program, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Harper. The reason for that being reasonably straightforward, that this has identified some really good opportunities we can work on here, potentially supporting partners with land, potentially supporting with technical advice, potentially supporting with, there's another one, goodness, it's been a long day, and another area. This just tidies it up so that we get a report back on what the options are, and then we can make a decision further down the track on whether we allocate budget or resource to it. So hopefully you can all support this.
Okay, Councillor Dennison.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just in pure fairness, I'm going to declare my interest only because Homes for People have been involved with this report, and I'll leave the table, thanks.
Cool. All right. Look, I'm happy to get this into the decision-making environment again, and it'll obviously, there'll be something connected to it in terms of some costs to getting a bit of work done, but I gather it's in the minimal space. Okay. All right, do we need to put anything around budget in this? No? Okay.
I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, in terms of that recommendation, I don't think there's a need for any budget to do that work. However, I guess I would say is the options are in the report. It's really now with council as to whether or not you want to fund any of those.
Okay, thank you. All right, before I come back to you, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks. Question for the mover. I'm reasonably sympathetic to this, but just when you talk about identified opportunities, so you're asking through this recommendation for officers to work up basically everything that's in there to the next stage.
There were three main opportunities that were identified through the survey. One was around availability of land, one was around technical support from officers, and one was around the council effectively charges for service for resource consent and building consent. So they were the three key opportunities that the survey identified. I don't think it's up to me to go, we provide $100,000 of support for planning services, whatever. I think it would be better that officers come back to us and say, this is what the land we could provide would be, and here would be the cost, this is what, yeah. So those three main areas they looked at.
Thanks. So you're really just wanting to give effect to what was identified in the survey rather than what was identified in canvassing other local authorities in terms of what they were delivering?
Yeah, correct. And if there were, as it says identified opportunities in this paper, so if there was another opportunity that officers felt would be worth bringing to us to consider a budget line, then I'd be more than open to that.
So to be a little bit clearer then for my vote on this, the recommendation on screen is inclusive of survey results and the assessment of other local authorities' initiatives.
I'm happy to add that as a brackets at the end if that would be the appropriate way to reflect that, but as the officers indicated, the way I've worded it is that just the opportunities have been identified in this report we've got, so yes.
That's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. No need for a right reply? Good, you're reading the room well. We will vote. Well done. 15 for, none against. Just before I go to close the meeting formally, can I just get a number from you, Scott?
Absolutely. Please, I've still got their sense of humour this late in the day. So I've got two numbers for you. The first number is the total capital program, and that is now currently sitting at 98.4 million. And the rates increase is 6.6. Subject to putting that in the model and just checking a few things in the morning, but that's it at the moment.
All right, well done. Well done. Okay, I will now go to the Deputy Mayor, who will have the joy of closing this very long meeting. We're back in 2 weeks.
Ka pai, tēnā koe, Your Worship. What a joy I have to say karakia tonight, to close our hui. And this karakia you've heard me say before, and I really think it'll resonate well with everyone tonight. Ko te pai a tātou mahi mō tēnei wā. Our work is finished for today, and ngā mihi ki a tātou katoa, and thank you to everyone. Mā tō koutou koha koha for your contribution to the elected members, to the officers, ngā mihi ki a koutou, kua whakapau kaha koutou. You've worked really hard and we appreciate that on behalf of all the elected members. Kia koutou e mā takitaki ana tēnā no hoki tātou. Hoki ora pai tātou katoa ki te kāinga, ki te whānau, mā te runga rawa e manaaki a tātou katoa me tō tātou hāpori taone o te papai o ia. So may we all return home safely and well to our families, to our friends, and may we be blessed, and all of us, along with our city, those members of our city. Sorry, I digressed a bit, must be tired a little bit. Tō reira, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Could I just acknowledge the staff too and my colleagues? Thank you for, yeah, well done. There's been a huge amount of work go on in the background which the public don't see, to answering questions, different motions coming up all the time to you. So thank you for being so professional. And to my colleagues, I can shout you an orange juice or a